Welcome back to Wellness with Delaney. Today I am with my doctor, so it's so much fun. This is Dr. Jen Joy. And if you've been listening to all the episodes of Wellness with Delaney, then you might recognize her because we have actually chatted before about hormone health in the past. Today we are talking about something completely different. It is a cutting edge treatment for depression that in some cases really can take out the need for SSRIs, which I think is a really amazing thing because, the more I research, the more I'm like, I don't know about how I feel about SSRIs, especially in mass quantities in society. So Dr. Joy is going to teach us a lot about just natural alternatives for depression, what you can do if you feel like you're experiencing some mild cognitive dysfunction, and how we can move forward with healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy brains for all. Dr. Joy, thank you so much for joining this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's good to see you, Delaney.
It's always great to see you. Okay, first of all, what is EXOMIND? I've been hearing about it a lot lately.
Yeah, EXOMIND is kind of the latest and greatest in what's called TMS technology, so transmagnetic stimulation. So it's a magnet therapy that stimulates the brain to increase what's called neuroplasticity. So essentially, we have all these neurons in our brain that over time, our body gets really efficient at using certain pathways, which makes some of these other pathways not quite as efficient. And the brain gets used to kind of going down the one pathway, which can sometimes leave the brain not as adaptable to different emotional changes and different situations. And what TMS does is it actually allows for us to kind of fire up those neurons and get them moving again. So if you think about it, it's like, on your way to work, you kind of go the same way every way. Maybe the first, month of driving to a new job, you might try different pathways to try to like avoid traffic or whatever, but eventually you kind of get into like the one or two ways you go. But what this does is it opens it up so that maybe now you're going to see like the 18 different ways that you could get to work and maybe take that one shortcut. And it's pretty great actually, because now all of a sudden your brain is able to see and deal with different things that come at you emotionally and allow for that connection. And what's even kind of neater about it is it's not just for anxiety, depression, those types of things, but it actually can also help with peak performance, can help a lot with getting you to be able to problem solve a little bit better. A lot of professional athletes are using this type of treatment now so that they're kind of better at their sport, able to kind of react quicker, think quicker, those types of things. So there's a lot of really great utility with the device. So.
Okay, that's really cool because I didn't realize, I thought it was more for just like getting you to baseline, right, from depression. I didn't realize this could also help raise your baseline. So, like, really, it's a biohack as well. That's really fascinating. So, for somebody like a creative or somebody who, is trying to use their brain creatively problem solve, is this a great alternative for them or a great option for them to really tap into that side?
It totally is. And in fact, I've done the treatment myself. I think I have situational anxiety like most of people out there do, just with, everything coming at us in all the directions, but no major anxiety or depression. And I've used it myself. It's a series of 6 treatments, ideally twice a week. So it's a pretty short treatment section. It's 30 minutes at a time. But what I did notice is that I am better at like handling situations as they come. So instead of procrastinating and, not wanting to refill that prescription or put that lab order in, I'm actually on top of it. And I'm feeling like really good about making sure I'm getting stuff done, when before I was like, well, I'll get to it a little bit later. So it is a way of biohacking. It can help with sleep. My husband also used the device and he was getting an extra hour of sleep at night. And
Wow.
if you think about that, that's 40 extra hours a month. For people who are getting 5-6 hours of sleep, to get 7 or 8 is amazing in that biohacking sense. So yeah, there's definitely more utility than just the anxiety, depression. What the company has been doing studies on recently, actually, which is interesting, is for food cravings. Which, with all the GLP-1s out there and people trying to figure out how to lose weight kind of more in a more healthy way, this is a really great biohack for that. They have found with their studies that virtually 100% of the people have reduction in food cravings after the course of treatment. And the average person in the course of 2 months loses about 4 pounds. And that's with no additional training, no additional nutrition counseling, like diet type things. So that's been really neat to kind of hear where that research is going, because it could be a really good way to augment some of the medications that people are using now, or even get them off of them, because that's the question I get. What's the next step with the GLPs? Like, if we want to get off of them, now what? And for me, this is a great opportunity to say, like, hey, this could really, continue and motivate you not to have those food cravings. And so there's that as well.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Is this because, like, because I know for a lot of people, let's say they have sugar addiction or just binging in general, like struggling with binge eating, with out of control eating, ignoring their hunger cues, fullness cues, etc. I always see with them, because I have a lot of girls in the DMs or girls that ask me that struggle with this. And I feel like a lot of times it's rooted in some sort of, like, that's their emotional coping mechanism, right? So let's say this stressor in my life comes up. Now my brain, that pathway, right, is taking me to this food as a comfort, or it could be celebration. Like, I accomplished something. Now my brain's like, time to celebrate. Let's eat. Let's drink. Da 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 da. And I see this a lot where, like, food has this emotional hold and this emotional component in society. So is the reason why this is helping with cravings and just overeating, is that because of that kind of that pathway, like with depression?
Yeah, exactly. So it comes down to neuroplasticity, and it comes down to those connections. So, if you think about it, like, I see it all the time in my office. Like, I was treating a kiddo for warts, and we had to do an injection into the wart. It's very painful. And mom was like, we've tried everything. We need to get him through this. So, what's the first thing she says is, we're going to go get ice cream afterwards. You did a really good job. Like, you made it through. And so as children, a lot of us are rewarded with, hey, you got this shot, or you got, you did this thing, and or hey, you won the game, like, let's go get food, or let's go get ice cream, or candy or cakes, or let's have a glass of wine because we just celebrated, or a beer, or whatever. And so your brain gets that dopamine hit from, like, as a reward for doing something good, or it's a coping mechanism. And again, we've gone down the one pathway for that coping mechanism, instead of, like, maybe going for a walk and getting that same dopamine hit, or doing some sort of exercise, or, so it's getting stuck into a singular pathway when there's all the other pathways. So it does work in, the reward system. It works in the anxiety side of things. It works in depression. It works in a lot of different directions. So it's really kind of a neat concept, and the technology has actually been around for a really, really long time. I think it's about 17 years now that they've been doing this. What's different, though, is that they've created the technology where it's more of a trapezoidal current, so it doesn't hurt. And because some of the old technologies feel like hammers hitting the head, this feels like little taps on the head.
So it's not like a lobotomy, essentially.
No, it's not. It actually is really peaceful.
Okay.
When you're getting it done, it feels good. It's just, it's like a little massage for the brain and the head, and so that's one of the big perks with this particular piece of equipment. The other perk is that they've found a way to make it so that you can get really good positive results with 6 treatments instead of 30.
Wow.
The major depressive disorder protocol does require 30 treatments, but for, like, more of the wellness and food cravings and those things, it's a 6 treatment protocol. So it's a much quicker, much less expensive type of a thing. So.
Wow. Does it last forever, or is it like laser hair where, like, someday you might need to come back?
Usually most people come back once or twice a year. So They usually do a series of 6, and then come in occasionally, like, once or twice a year.
Okay. Here's 2 things that I would be interested in seeing if this works for in my own life. Because I don't really struggle with, like, depression, anxiety. I have a pretty healthy mentality with food. I think we all have moments where, like, ooh, I overate, but, like, I have a healthy relationship with food. But okay, so, like, we're talking about those pathways that are built from childhood, right? How when parents teach their kids that food is a reward, they're now primed to believe that into adulthood. I feel like in life, a lot of times I was rewarded with gifts. And now, whenever something good happens in my life or something crazy, I want to shop. And it's like clothes, whatever, right? Where, like, growing up, my parents would be like, if you learn to ride your bike, we'll buy you a pet hermit crab, right? Or, like, if you jump off this scary dock, we'll buy you a frog. Or, like, they would take me to buy clothes. Like, it was I was always rewarded with gifts. And now I like to reward myself with presence. It's not great. I'm not proud to admit this, but it is for sure a habit. And then the other one would be I've been really wanting to learn new languages. So I'm curious if we're building that neuroplasticity. It sounds like the first one would be really similar to the food, where it's just like building a new
Mhm.
pathway. But for something like language, could this help you as well? Because I know that for kids, like they can learn languages really fast because their brains are so plastic, right? So if it's increasing the plasticity of our brains, could we potentially become like bilingual, trilingual while doing this?
So it's not necessarily going to help with like memory per se. That's more on your right side of the brain, and we're
Okay.
doing left-sided treatment, and they're definitely working on that because that's also the area that is really responsible for dementia. So I would suspect that in the next 5 years we're going to see more on that memory side of things. But if you think about neuroplasticity with emotions and language, like there is an emotional connection to language, and so it might make a person more motivated to actually learn the language because
Yeah.
it might hit a different kind of dopamine receptor, a different pleasure sort of thing. So in a roundabout way, I definitely think so on the language side. As far as the shopping thing, that's exactly like what it's indicated
Yeah.
for. Is maybe creating maybe a slightly different outlook on your emotional reward center. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that is what I need because I feel like the amount of times I reward myself with clothes is it's not great. I'm working on it, but like, and this is with all humility, me admitting this, right? I've never really
Yeah.
shared this, but like, I think it really does stem from childhood. And now you're talking about this with food. I never really feel like I was rewarded with food that much, but I for sure was rewarded with pets, with clothes, with toys, like all these things. And that's been something I've carried into life, and I've always wondered why. And I'm like, wait, this is making sense. There's a neural pathway that's been entrenched since I was a small child. I don't remember a time when, and listen, if my parents are listening to this, keep the gifts coming. Let me be clear. I love gifts. I
No, I
love
love it. And I love your parents, so I'm just cracking up hearing this story.
I don't want them to stop. I just need to become more financially responsible. Okay, so with all of this, I'm like already sold. I really want to try this as well. So when it comes to the difference between EXOMIND and something like SSRIs, what's the main difference? Like, what's happening on your brain with the two?
Yeah, so the SSRIs are going to be more of a chemical way to allow for you to feel better versus actually a physical change in the brain dynamics. And so what I like about that is it's an actual like treatment that can get you better long term versus just chemically providing support and stability. And don't get me wrong, like I do prescribe SSRIs, like I do believe in them. I don't believe that everyone should be on them, and I do believe that we have put way too much of a crutch into them because that's all that's been really available. So they are a great tool for the right person when we've exhausted our other options. However, I do feel that this also can work alongside the SSRIs too. That is one contraindication of using the device is that you want to make sure someone's been stable on their medications for ideally 6 months or more before adding this in. And the goal then for someone who's on them would be to maybe work on tapering off of those medications slowly over time. So this,
Mhm.
wouldn't be like a stop SSRIs, go on to the EXOMIND, they would work together. And one to me is it's kind of like your emergency, like let's get you stable if we need to kind of with a medication, but it's not going to heal the problem. And mind you, of course, like things like good therapy and working with a counselor and working through why you might be needing to be on those medications is really important. And also even for people who are going through the EXOMIND just for things like food cravings, having a good support system, good coach, a nutritionist, those types of things is also really helpful because it's going to accentuate and accelerate the usage of this tool.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like how you said like SSRIs are a good option when you've exhausted other options. And I think that's for me at least like some beef that I have with the modern way that we prescribe SSRIs. I see people looking at them before they look at their gut health, which is huge. Your gut is your second brain, before looking at any lifestyle factors such as diet, exercise, healthy relationships. Are you going out in the sun, right? All of these things, they're so important for our nervous system or even hormones. I mean, I know you've mentioned in our hormone episode, we don't have an SSRI deficiency. we have a hormone deficiency, right? We have all of these other components that can really impact mental health positively or negatively. So why are doctors not looking at that before they prescribe SSRIs in mass quantities?
Yeah, and I think it's just their training, to be honest. They're not trained to look at these outside things. And unfortunately, due to our healthcare system, they've got the, 5 to 15 minutes, and they don't have the time to really dig into the root causes of what's going on. And so it's, a lot of people get really, really upset with kind of your conventional, allopathic doctors and nurse practitioners and things. And I honestly don't think it's quote unquote their fault. I think it's just the system that they're in. And so, I'm seeing personally a lot of people are looking for solutions outside of the drugs, and that's the people that come to see me, and there are a lot of good things out there, and you got to it. I mean, I will tell you, middle-aged women and men, like, hormones are huge. Like, you have to address hormones, like, because even if we did an EXOMIND treatment and you've got zero estrogen or progesterone and you're not sleeping at night, like, this tool might be helpful, but it's not going to be as helpful as if we got all the other things into alignment. Gut health, you have a huge amount of serotonin receptors in your gut, and if everything's all wackadoodle in there, like, you're going to feel terrible. So you got to address that. Sunshine, vitamin D, living in the Pacific Northwest, my goodness, like, almost everybody I see who isn't taking vitamin D, who lives here, is deficient, and it makes a huge difference. And it's again not their fault. Even if you're outside between October and April, the way that the sun bounces off our atmosphere, you're not getting the right UV light to convert vitamin D2 to D3. You have to supplement, or you need to go to Florida, which the Florida option is kind of nice. But so there's so many different things that, like, I didn't even know until I went to school. Like, a lot of people I work with even are like, well, I'm outside all winter. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's good you're outside. Nature is amazing. And there are so many studies also of walking in the woods and how that positively affects mental health because of the phytochemicals from the trees and the plants that you're breathing in when you're outside in nature. So there's so many different things. Like, we're meant to be, outside, like, putting our feet into the earth and grounding and doing these things. But sometimes we need a little bit of a boost because of our environment. We also live in a very fast-paced technological world. We're exposed to EMFs and screens, blue light all day. Like, things are fast. I mean, if you think of the world like Las Vegas, I mean, it's just bright and shiny and colorful, and we've got our cell phones that we're on half the day. I mean, it just adds up, and it really can really focus in on those one neuroplastic pathway that is, again, here we are, the one pathway, dopamine, instead of, like, all of them. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we're seeing, I don't know if you see this with a lot of like Gen Z, but I've been seeing also lately like this trend of like bed rotting. And they literally lay in their bed and just scroll TikTok all day. And I'm like, you're just dopamine dumping all day long. And no wonder you feel so depressed afterwards. Like, no wonder you feel like garbage because you're on these sites all day that are like literally designed to keep you addicted, to be just giving insane amounts of unhealthy levels of dopamine and lifestyle stuff. And then a lot of them, they do go to the doctor for depression, and so much of it is lifestyle, and that kills me. So I would love to talk about some of those different components, kind of dig into those components that you brought up. So hormonal, let's say somebody comes in, they're struggling with mental health, especially around the middle age, but really any age, and it turns out to be a hormone deficiency. How would you address this? Would you do hormones in tandem with EXOMIND? Like, what would your path forward look like?
Yeah, definitely. I always like to meet the patient where they're at. So we talk about, the different types of options you would have with hormones. There's things like seed cycling, which you can get actual, like, minor doses of hormones from different seeds and different foods. So for some people who are looking to really stay as absolutely natural as possible, I do recommend that. That does take a long time. And that's one thing people have to be really aware of is when we talk about kind of things that are more natural, it's, you don't just take the thing and you get better. Like, it's not a drug. It takes time. It takes your body to kind of adapt to it. So seed cycling can take 6 months to a year to actually, like, see major shifts in hormones. So, that's one conversation I have with my patients is coming up with realistic expectations of what you're doing. There's also tinctures that are extracted herbs that can also help, and you can do herbal medicine as well. Sometimes we even do some homeopathy to kind of optimize that. And then there's your bioidentical hormone replacement. So there are hormones that you can actually get from nature, from different plants, and extract them out and get them compounded into a form of medication that can be helpful. And so, a lot of, especially like my perimenopausal woman who just doesn't feel right, sometimes it's that really big dip in progesterone. Progesterone's that cool, calm, collective hormone, and it helps us sleep at night. I always ask that question. There's two questions I ask. If they've been pregnant, how did they feel pregnant? Because if they felt great pregnant, they probably will like a progesterone. And then two, how's their sleep, and when did the sleep stop? And it's usually correlated with a really big drop in progesterone, and sometimes a little bit of progesterone can be a game changer. And then you throw the EXOMIND in, so they're sleeping well, they're feeling well, their brains calm down. And progesterone, believe it or not, is a neuro anti-inflammatory, so it does help a lot with neuroinflammation. So it's a great combination along with EXOMIND and that TMS treatment to kind of help, again, increase that neuroplasticity and increase the body's ability to deal with situational stress.
So with that then, because I'm seeing a lot of women in their 20s as well who are super high strung, super anxious, and just knowing how our world is set up as far as food and toxins and clothing and all these things, right? Do you think that a lot of that high strung anxiety could be coming from their progesterone being disrupted?
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of the social media is talking about these days, is like the microplastics and the endocrine disruptors, and those include like pretty much anything that's smelly, like good smells
Yeah.
included. I think a lot of people are becoming more aware that maybe we shouldn't be using perfumes. Like essential oils are fine, but like a lot of these chemicals that were in our daily life, maybe not such a good thing for our bodies these days. And I think that there's a lot more awareness. Things like the environmental working group is great to kind of get an idea of whether or not some of these things that we're putting on and in our bodies are creating what are called endocrine disruptors and issues that are affecting our hormones. So, and then, we were talking about the other day, plastics, like our plastic clothing, and there's so much that's one thing. Like, I also really try to kind of calm people down too, is you got to do the best you can, but we do live in this environment. And that's where, coming up with like ways to detox, like sweating and, exercise, sauna, those types of things are super important too. Because I don't know very many people that can live in a perfectly environmentally stable world if you live in the world. Maybe if you're out on a farm, living off the grid, that's another story, but most of us aren't in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to like figuring out what's the most important, right? What are the most important battles? To me, wearing non-toxic underwear, so important. And recently non-toxic activewear, because when you're sweating, right? So if I'm wearing polyester that's full of chemicals, I'm sweating, it's not breathing. It's because it doesn't breathe, it's sweat wicking, right? Which means essentially it's staying trapped in my skin and recirculating through my body with all those petrochemicals and then disrupting hormones. So, right, those things. What am I sweating in? What am I wearing over reproductive organs? Super important, non-toxic. And then like what am I cooking on? What's my food storage? And then so that's all glass and non-toxic. But then I got Thai takeout last night and it came in a plastic container. And I had a moment of cringe, but I'm like, okay, well, it's not the end of the world because 99% of the time, right? And so I think that's where it's like you have to think about what's the most important, what's on your reproductive system, what are you typically eating off of, right? You can't go in public and completely avoid all plastic, but you certainly can be intentional about what's in your home, or even things like what are your blankets that you're wrapping your body in. I always think of like what's coming in the most contact with my body. And I recently got my dog an organic cotton blanket for bed because I realized she was sleeping in one of those like really soft kind of home goodsy polyester ones. And I'm like, that's not good for her. So we switched her out. And I just think like, what are you spending a lot of time in? And if you do that, I feel like people can see really big results. I even know I tripled my progesterone in 6 months. And one of the big changes I made was switching to non-toxic activewear and being serious about that. And so I think that if you're just serious about those big things that are the big exposures in your own home and in your day-to-day life, you're going to see massive results, even if you can't completely eliminate plastic in your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is honestly about the little changes. Like, I don't know if we've had this story before, but I was working with a guy who decided to go full carnivore, and we did a full set of screening on him, including heavy metals. And it was non-provoked, meaning it was just what's floating around in his body every day. Well, guess what came back high? Aluminum. It was 10 times higher. It's supposed to be under
Wow.
7, and he was at like 700. And I was like, where are you getting this from? I was like, do you use aluminum deodorant? Like, we were I asked all these questions, and finally turns out that he's cooking his meat in a cast iron pan, but he had a splatter guard that he wrapped in aluminum foil.
Mm.
And he was scraping the good fat, right, onto his steak and eating it. He was getting all of that aluminum. And
Ooh.
so, growing up as a kid, I mean, what did we do? You go camping and you put your potatoes and meat and everything in aluminum foil, toss it in the fire and cook it. Like, it's stuff that I never even thought of. Like, I'm so not, I wouldn't call it afraid, but I'm very against aluminum foil now after seeing that result. And it's not something I would have thought. Like, this guy is as healthy as can be, and he didn't know he was poisoning himself with aluminum. And
Wow.
it's such a simple thing to fix. So, it's just little things like that can make a huge difference. And now he's not doing that, and his numbers look great, and things are good. But we worry about that, especially for women in breast cancer, is that aluminum, and so I've started switching to parchment paper, which may not be the best, but it's definitely better than that aluminum. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
that's crazy. I never even thought about that. But yeah, aluminum foil is crazy and people really do cook in it a lot. If you're
Mhm.
grilling a lot, like oh my gosh, it's so crazy. And I've been learning more about it. And even if people don't have non-toxic cookware, that can be a major one. And then I've also learned that it's a neurotoxin.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. It's it this is where I have a lot of beef with Chick-fil-A. Which it's like it's because they're the Christian company. And I
Right.
feel like being a Christian company, if you poison people and sterilize people and pump them full of neurotoxins, I don't think you're serving the Lord, no matter how polite your employees are. I just don't. But their chicken sandwich has aluminum in it, like the actual chicken. And I'm like, tell me why a chicken patty needs aluminum. That's crazy to me. I mean, you have to be careful at where like look at your ingredients beyond just the macro. Like I got in a little bit of an argument with a friend once where he was like, if you think about it, the McGriddle sandwich is actually really healthy. It's just bread, egg, cheese, and meat. And I was like, no, it's not. The meat is not just meat. Like the bread is not just bread. You have to look at what's actually in those ingredients. It's not like a burger that you bought at the grocery store that the only ingredient is beef. There are so many hidden ingredients, and you have to become, I think if you want to be serious about your mental health, about your physical health, like you have to become so serious about actually looking at what you're eating at least 90% of the time. And I mean, aluminum being a neurotoxin, I would imagine could have some mental health effects. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, it definitely can. Yeah. It's not a good metal. None of them are, but and it's just, I mean, it's awareness, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to get away from it 100% of the time, but it's the awareness of it. So, and it can affect your mental health. I mean, all the metals can, and there are a lot more metals floating around than I think the average person understands and realizes. Like, before being a doctor, worked in commercial fishing. I was a fisheries observer where I would collect data on the commercial fishing effort, and I was on the tuna boats out of Hawaii, and I ate tuna every single day. And I didn't know anything about mercury. Like, how could you, right? Like, and I mean, I'm full of mercury. I used to grind metal boats with lead, in my
Wow.
20s, thinking I was cool not wearing PPE. And so I'm full of lead too. Like, there's these things that you just don't know or learn about. And I think we're getting better as a society of creating education around it. But, the little stuff like the aluminum foil, I mean, boom.
Yeah, easy fix. Easy,
Easy
easy fix.
fix.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So here's my question about seafood then, because I've heard, and I'm not sure actually, but I've heard that potentially the selenium can like offset the mercury. Is there any validity to that?
that would make sense, but I don't know the actual answer to that, for sure. Which selenium is really found in sea vegetables and sea creatures. It's really not in our soil anymore.
Mhm.
But I could see that being helpful for sure, because it does affect your detox pathways to some extent. And The big thing with fish that I tell people is your fish that don't live very long, like your salmon, they live about 3 years or so out before they start swimming upstream again to reproduce. Like they're not going to have as much metal as like your fish that are living 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
So, like your smaller little fishes, like your sardines and mackerel are going to be lower in those heavy metals. And it's not to say you can't have a little bit. I mean, tuna once or twice a month is probably not a big deal, but people eating tuna fish sandwiches every day, probably not a good thing.
Yeah.
So you just have to be mindful again of the exposure, knowing our body's meant to be able to handle toxins, but we just don't want to overload it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. My traditional Chinese medicine doctor has been trying to get me to eat more fish for the DHA. And after I went down the parasite rabbit hole, I stopped eating as much fish just intuitively. And I used to eat even a lot of like sushi and tuna fish. And I was like, okay, no more of that for me. If I ever eat sushi again, it'll be like a Japanese omasaki experience, where it's like you have to experience it. But I haven't really been eating it. He's like, you have to eat more fish. And he's like, don't worry about mercury. There's selenium, da 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 da. And I was like, that seems like it makes sense. But I also feel like, yeah, same thing. Like, I'm not going to be eating like tuna and swordfish every day. Like, I think I want to start liking sardines. I really do. I need to find ways to enjoy it. But even things like I make a vinaigrette with anchovies and it's so good. Or like just some of the smaller fish like bottom feeders or crab and stuff like that, I feel like will be a lot better. Okay, so then speaking of all this, parasites. Do you see often, and I don't know what your like experience or knowledge is about parasites, but do you see a lot of people coming in with mental health, like depression, anxiety, and it's actually like connected to parasites?
Well, the almost kind of funny answer to that is I think people are getting mental health issues from worrying too much about parasites, to be honest.
That's fair. That's really fair.
Tell you out of my 10 patients yesterday, 7 of them came in freaking out about parasites. And I was like,
Wow.
all right, guys, like, let's calm down here.
Yeah.
Parasites are real. They do affect people. I was laughing because I do have a patient that he came in with actual parasites, and I was so excited because he actually had a test that showed he had parasites. And
Yeah.
he was like, my medical doctor is not really worried about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're like the actual person I want to treat for parasites because you have them. Like you rarely get a positive parasite test because really, you have to catch them in the right life cycle. You have to catch them before their exoskeletons dissolve, like all of that.
Yeah, they rarely show a positive, even if you have them. That's pretty wild. It must have been pretty bad.
Yeah, exactly. He had done a big road trip all the way down to Argentina and back, and
that'll do it.
But he was convinced he got him in Texas, but that's okay. So my caveat with parasites is everybody has them. You are exposed to them, especially if you have animals at all. Like you're gonna have them. Are there healthy amounts of parasites? Yes. Like they're not. You don't want large amounts. You want to keep your parasites under control, but it's the same thing. We all have yeast, that was like the 80s thing, right? Like candida. Now we're in like parasite world. Like it shifts. It's kind of like, the markets, like, 1 year it's not avocado market, then it's kale, then it's, corn. And, it's all kind of like what is trending. Parasites is trending right now. I do believe that it is important to address it, especially if you spend any time in third world countries, if you spend any time on a farm, if you are eating a lot of like raw fish. You mentioned swordfish. Swordfish are so gross. The amount of parasites in swordfish is
really
terrifying. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So that's like one thing that I won't eat is swordfish because of the parasites. I will tell you that they do a really good job of screening for parasites on most of the boats. They have what's called a candling machine where they can actually look through the fish and see if there's parasites in the fish. So at least for the white flatfishes and stuff, they will candle them and look at them. So most of your fish really doesn't have a lot of parasites in it. And if you cook it all the way, most of the time that's going to kill those parasites and it's just going to be extra protein. But no, it's hard to say if parasites specifically are a cause for mental health or not. Because it's really hard for us to test for them, even with the best testing, because again, life cycles and their enzymatic breakdown of their exoskeletons, it's really hard to find them. I think everyone could, benefit from doing some amount of parasite cleansing. There's some really great herbals out there that, doing that once a year, like for a month of, taking like an herbal parasite cleanse. I've seen it go so opposite, where I've had patients request these really, really hardcore medications that can affect your liver and kidneys and want to go on it for like 6 months. And like, that's causing more harm than it is helping. And
Yeah.
that's the part that where that mental health component, I think, is actually getting affected, is people are so worried about these parasites, that they're actually like hurting their mental health from the worry, from thinking about these things, more so than understanding like we do have a symbiotic relationship with most of the bugs in our body. We have more things that are not us in our body than we have us, which is
Wow.
really crazy to think about. So
Yeah.
it's all about balance, having good flora, balanced flora, and whatnot. But
Yeah, and I think that's really important because I mean, a lot of people, let's say you want to go on these hardcore medications, parasites are also opportunistic. So you want to keep your body healthy and strong and your organs and your detox pathways. Like you want a healthy liver because the healthier body is really parasites are going to have a harder time attaching to you. They're not going to want you as much. Like it's the same thing as like any sort of viral infection, right? Like it's all opportunistic. Keep your body and your detox pathways as healthy as possible. That's like the number one thing to do. Versus like I love a good parasite cleanse, don't get me wrong, but versus always being reactive, like be proactive. And then with that, yeah, like I do the Rogers Hood parasite cleanse, love it. The first few days that I did it the first time, one of the biggest die off symptoms that I had was random anxiety. Like
yeah,
I I started on a weekend, thank goodness, because I just was walking around with this like extreme anxiety, but I couldn't pinpoint why. I was like, why do I feel this way? Like, I'm not anxious about anything in particular. I just feel like I should be anxious and like I'm anxious about something and I have no idea what it is. And then after I did like a coffee enema and like a fulvic soak, it went away. And I was like, okay, that was clearly some die off. So that was really interesting to me. I noticed like there were some mental health die off symptoms that like shocked me because I don't normally struggle with mental health. I used to be a really anxious person, but it's also interesting because I spent a lot of time in third world nations around that time.
right.
So there are other things where I mean you can definitely get parasites here, but I spent 3 months in the Philippines drinking like nasty water and eating swamp fish. You know what I mean? I'm sure there were some scary, spooky things inside my body. And that
Yeah.
was also a time when I had really bad anxiety to the point of losing sleep, probably connected. But with that being said, now I think the biggest thing people can do, like, yeah, you can proactively do some herbal cleanses, but just take care of your body. Don't let an opportunistic species have the chance to attach to you. But then with that, also, there's so much that you can do, like EXOMIND, all these other things that might actually make a big impact. So let's say somebody is listening to this and they're like, okay, wait, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, or maybe there's like I'm a total biohacker and want to get smarter and open up those creative pathways. That's definitely me. Like I'm like, wait, anything that can help me open up creative pathways for problem solving and just being more creative and thinking outside the box is really, really appealing. How can they get ExoMind? How do they get in contact with you to book this?
Yeah, I'd have them get a hold of my clinic. It's Sisu Health, and our website's sisuhealth.net, which I can give you that information. And they can go ahead and give us a call, and we can get them set up for a consult. I usually like to do an actual visit with clients, not just a quick consult to say yes, do this, because there are so many other tools, especially if you are dealing with some anxiety and depression, different herbal medicines, different things that can be helpful. And I treat the whole body. I don't like to just treat one little thing. I think it's important to look head to toe and make sure that we're not missing anything, because again, any of these tools can be helpful, but it's not your conventional allopathic, like here's this one thing to fix this one thing. Like it's, why did you get anxious in the first place, or what are the food cravings stemming from? Like, is it really from childhood and getting that reward system, or are there other tools that we can talk about of like adding alternatives that will still make you feel good but also nourish your body a little bit better? So usually I have people do an office consult with me, and then we discuss that, get you started on the treatment protocol. Again, it's historically about 6 treatments, twice a week. Sometimes I will have people do 1 or 2 extra depending on, if they need that extra help. I do have one gal that, she's got the time and the money, and she comes in weekly because she just feels great. It was probably my favorite story so far with it is, she came in, she goes to the gym kind of for her mental health, which I tell all of my patients, honestly, exercise is probably one of the most important biohacking things out there for anyone. And, working your muscles and doing these things. Like it is so important. That's kind of on my list of please make sure you're getting some sort of physical activity because it will help all of your health. But she was going to the gym and was just having a rough go at it. And she would wear like all black, like workout clothes. And she'd, come in and we would do some other treatments for her. She had some other stuff going on. And the EXOMIND came and I said, well, this might be helpful for you. Do you want to try it? She's like, sure. So we get through 7 treatments. She did 7 and she shows up. Her ears are pierced. She's 65. She's in hot pink sweater. Like just all of a sudden she looked like Eeyore originally and turned into Piglet after these 7 treatments. And she's doing great. She's joined a girls group, women's group that she travels around the world now with them and is just living her best life. And it was such a drastic shift from where she was. And it's been so fun to watch her. I'm so excited for her because I really do feel like it really opened the door to like letting her live her best life. And she was just so stuck. And this was like the turnkey that got her unstuck. So there, yeah, that was great. But yeah, so just it would be great. Call the office. Let's get you scheduled for a consult, and then we can start doing treatments. So
amazing. Yeah, that's an incredible story, and I love to hear it. It's like I love that idea of getting unstuck in your mental health because I do think a lot of people feel really stuck there where they are, and maybe it's not severe, but they just don't feel good, and they're stuck there for years, maybe even decades. And to have an option that can help them remove that friction and get unstuck and just live life free of that burden is just incredible. So I know I asked you this last time I interviewed you, but it's been about a year since our last interview. So right now, Dr. Joy, what is your health goal?
My health goal, it's a great question. I guess, I don't know if this is a goal per se, but my trajectory in my health right now is I'm actually getting all the tests done. I'm testing metals, the environmental toxin testing. I'm doing the full suite of tests. It runs about $1,000. It's pretty pricey, but I want to have a baseline so that when we continue to talk and I talk with my patients, I have this is where I started and this is where I'm going. Yeah. Because I think that's really important as a doctor to be living the life that I'm teaching other people. And so within the next week or so, I'm going to be doing all these tests to really get a good baseline. And then from there, I'm going to look at my health plan to optimize all of these things. So we have a lot of different tools in my clinic to help with that. So I'm really, really working on trying to figure out ways to modulate and optimize my blood sugar to keep it very consistent. So I'll also be getting a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, to really dial in the diet and see what if I ate rice, or what if I have protein and then I ate rice, or, is my sugar spiking because of, avocado, which would be counterintuitive, but it's really interesting. There's a lot of nuances with blood sugar stabilization, and I'm really focusing on that because I think insulin resistance is a huge deal in the perimenopausal woman, which I am, and a lot of my clients are perimenopausal, menopausal, and are struggling with that belly weight gain. And I personally I'm working to kind of optimize my health and get it as healthy as I can and lose some weight in the process. So starting with baseline and working on, that whole insulin resistance perimenopausal thing. So that's where I'm at right now.
Amazing. That'll be such a great tool to bring towards the other women that you are working with every day. Well, Dr. Joy, thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today. I always love chatting with you. Loved this talk, and I cannot wait for people to learn about this because it sounds like EXOMIND really is what many people in the world need to benefit from mentally.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a game changer in the mental health world, and it's accessible compared to some of the other tools that were available before. Like it's a really doable treatment protocol, and I think people are going to do really, really well with it. So.
Amazing. Well, if you guys love this episode, make sure to check out Dr. Joy and Sisu Health. If you're in the Washington area or you're not and you're open to traveling, this could be a great option for you if you are starting to feel stuck in your mental health or in different pathways in your own life. As always, I appreciate your guys' listen, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.